I was recently thinking about all the games I've played throughout my life, and I wanted to see if do I play the same type of game? Are they different? And if they're different, like are there any similarities? And I kind of found out something weird. I've played video games ever since I was a kid. I didn't always have the latest and greatest console to play on. I mean, I remember when I had a GameCube when everybody else had a PlayStation 2 and a Xbox 360 or an Xbox, whatever. Like one of my earliest memories of a game that I played as a kid is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I remember being kind of like, I love the game. I love the open world aspect of it and how you could go anywhere, but I felt like there were limitations and restrictions, you know, like you can't climb up this wall. There's invisible walls you can't walk past. There's guards stopping you from physically leaving the opening part of that game at the Deco tree and stuff. Like you can't even get there until you get the sword and the shield. Like you have to find the pieces in order to be able to progress further. Nowadays, games are open world and you can do anything whenever, wherever. And I always thought like people with a PlayStation or an Xbox had games like that, which may or may not have been true, but as a kid, I felt like, I'm still restricted. Anyways, the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was one of the very first games that I remember playing as a kid and how it kind of opened my world to video games. One of the memories I have with that game was that was a game that was almost impossible. Well, it actually was. It was literally impossible for me to beat. I remember inviting one of my best friends at the time over for sleepovers just so that the second he walked through the door, I handed him my GameCube controller and asked him, hey, can you beat this dungeon for me? Like, what? It wasn't until I became an adult and then they remade the Ocarina of Time for the 3DS and I bought it and I finally beat it as an adult. And it was still tricky, especially that stinking water temple. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm older now and I've played a lot of games since then, but I do find myself always coming back to a handful of similar ones. And this had me thinking, I would like to make a video kind of talking about my favorite games. However, in the process of making this video, I discovered something very weird about all of them that connects all of them together. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to stick to the games that I can recall that vividly pop up into my memory as games I sunk a lot of time in. Speaking of not having the latest and greatest console to play with like all my friends had when I was a kid, I remember there was a time when I was in a school bus on my way to school, and on the floor, I noticed a Game Boy Advance cartridge on the floor. It was gray. I picked it up. I crawled underneath the seats like we all do, and when I turned it over, it said Advance Wars. Now, I had no idea what this game was, and it wasn't mine, so I did what any good kid would do. I gave it to the bus driver and said, hey, I think someone lost this. Here it is. And a few weeks go by and I was curious about that game. Like the time kept going on. I was thinking more and more about it. Yeah, I didn't have a Game Boy Advance, so it's not even like if I had the game, I could play it. I asked my bus driver, hey, did anyone claim that game? And they said no. I was like, well, do you mind if I have it? And they saw no problem in giving it to me. You know, a few weeks had already gone by and there's only so many people on the bus and no one claimed it. And she was adamant. She publicized it. And no one claimed it. So she gave it to me. And, well, man, I didn't have a way of playing that game. But once I hit high school, I believe I was in high school, I got my very first Nintendo DS Lite. And if you guys remember the DS Lite, yes, it played DS games, but also had a special slot on the bottom where you could play Game Boy Advance games. And so, boom, the second I got that, that was one of the very first things I tried out, along with Pokémon Diamond, which we'll talk about here in a second. When I pulled that game open, I learned very quickly it was a turn-based strategy game where you get to deploy land units, naval units, air units, and you get to take turns. You play on a grid, and you move all your units around. You have to capture the opponent's headquarters or destroy all their units, and I absolutely loved it. And this game would turn out to be one of my favorite games of all time. It came very naturally to me because as a kid, I remember playing chess with my dad and my grandfather, and chess was very appealing to me, and very much still is. This is also a game that I still play on the reg. I'm currently streaming, and in the first hour of my stream on most nights, I dedicate to playing chess with my viewers, and it's been a lot of fun. If you want to hang out with us, I stream 7 to 9 p.m. on weekdays here at the channel and over on Twitch. Playing chess as a kid, for me, it felt like whenever I got my first win against my dad or my first win against my grandfather, it felt like it was my first time in my life where I was able to do something at the level or better than an adult. And that was a very satisfying feeling that would probably have positive effects growing up into adolescence and preteen, teenager and on, right? Getting that early win in your life, a game that seemed to have all the answers right in front of you on the board. If you lost, it was because of your own ability, and if you won, it was because of your own ability. It wasn't like playing Yahtzee and you're just dependent on the roll of the dice, you know? The game that I've spent single-handedly the most time on my Nintendo DS Lite was probably Pokémon Diamond. And for me, I have a special place in my heart for that game because it was my very first Pokemon game that I was able to play. And at that time, Pokemon is huge. Everyone played Pokemon. They played Generation 1, 2, and 3. Me, I didn't have anything to be able to play those games. So this was my very first opportunity to kind of get into that culture. And that alone made me feel like I was a part of it. I mean, I remember times when I was on the school bus and I had friends who had a Nintendo DS and I didn't, and it's dark in the bus, and I remember I'd watch my friends on the bus play video games, and the thing I remember like distinctly is how vibrant and how rich the screen would look. It's a small screen. I mean, I have a 3DS XL right now, but the screens on this now are so like almost 3 times the size of a Nintendo DS Lite. But to me at that time, that was amazing. And the way the colors popped off of the black DS console, I was like, wow, that is so vibrant. That is so rich. Like I just want to be sucked into that world. And then when I finally got one, man, Pokemon Diamond. I know Pokemon Diamond and Pearl don't get quite as much love these days as how I remember it. People definitely think Pokemon Platinum is the better version of all of them. I never played that one, and I can assume that they probably are right. But at the time, I played Pokemon Diamond for hundreds of hours. And the same thing here with Pokemon Diamond, if not Pokemon in general, this kind of turn-based element where I get to train up my Pokemon, reach certain levels, attack, respond, that sort of thing. It was very satisfying for me, a game that I spent a lot of time in bed late at night playing. One more game that I want to mention in this video related to the Nintendo DS Lite was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragons. I believe it's called Shadow Dragons. I think it's a remake of an older version of the same titled Fire Emblem game, and I remember loving that to pieces. And it didn't take me long to discover it was practically the same game as Advance Wars, and the only difference being you had permadeath, and you don't get to deploy multiple units and create them, right? You deploy with a team, and from that you have to just use your team. You have archers, you have guards, you have paladins, knights, that sort of thing, and a mage. You have magic users and stuff. And if your character dies, it's permanently dead from your save file. All right, so usually if one of my characters died, I would just turn it off, reboot, and let me try again. All right, so the permadeath never really affected me, but it did make you I had to be much more intentional with my moves. Unlike Advanced Wars, where you can keep deploying more units and then just keep sending them out there, this game really emphasized the importance of taking care of your soldiers, your Joes, the guys in the front lines, right? It made it more, you were building relationships with these guys. And I distinctly remember an aspect of that game that I absolutely fell in love with was the arena. And these would be good spots to train up your units to like max level, and you could grind because you would get into the arena, you'd put up some money. It was a good way to make money as well. If you win some money. Also, you get experience for your units. And I remember I would go all the way up to level 20, which is the max level, use a Master Shield. I do believe it's called a Master Shield. You would use that. You would essentially prestige, you'd go back down to rank 1 and you'd be the next level up class. So I believe a knight would transform into a paladin, a mage would transform into a sage, a Pegasus would transform into a dragon knight, that sort of thing. Man, I would try to train up like 4, 5, maybe even 6 people, max level, and then up again. That way I was strong and ready for the next fight. And I remember distinctly, sometimes you could cancel this arena animation if you thought you were going to lose. 'Cause again, if you lose, you die. And if you die, even though you're in the arena, it still counts as a death and is a permadeath. And I would just reset and have to start all over again. It would suck. You get like 2 or 3 people fully maxed out, and then you wouldn't react in time to cancel out this arena fight. Your unit would die, and then you'd have to reset because you don't want to lose them. It was a hard feeling, but it taught resilience, and it was just such a fun mechanic in the game. This is when I realized there was a very interesting pattern connecting all of them. I like games where I have time to think. You know, I get to think ahead. I don't have to make quick decisions right off the spot, but rather I see everything on the table. What is the best way moving forward? Okay, I'm going to move this unit over here to the right. I'm going to move this unit over here to the left. I'm going to keep these guys back, and I'm going to advance forward. Now when they come back, I'll be in range to hit them. Like, having this downtime in between and not having to react in real time real quickly is a way of... It was kind of calming because I knew, like, hey, I have time to make kind of like the best decision possible, or an educated decision. And if I needed to take a step away, pause the game, DS, you know how they work. You close them. Pause. Done. You can't just pause Call of Duty, right? It's like you're online playing team deathmatch. It's like, oh, pause, I got to make dinner, or oh, pause, I just want to let me think about what I want to do for the next 20 seconds in this game. How am I going to capture point B? No. And I guess all 4 of these games literally do have a very in-your-face, common mechanic in the game, and that they're all turn-based. Chess, my turn, then it's your turn. Pokemon, my turn, then it's your turn. Advance Wars, my turn, then it's your turn. Anyways, on to the next chapter. Transitioning from when I was a teenager and then going, from high school to college, that was a big transition in my life. I was playing a lot of Nintendo DS games, all these turn-based strategy stuff, but then I was finally introduced to my very first Xbox 360, which really opened it up. I got an Xbox 360 very late in that generation cycle, but once I finally did, I remember playing Call of Duty Black Ops, and that was super fun because it got me connected with my friends after school. One of my favorite things about that game was the prestige system. So when you were playing online Call of Duty, you could get up to like level 50, I think, and then once you did, you could prestige, go back down to the bottom and re-grind to get your prestige rank number 2, and prestige, go all the way back up to 50, unlock all your weapons again, prestige, and then every time you got a cool gamer tag with it, or a banner or something, and you could tell when you're in lobbies, you would see people with, I think the max prestige was like 10 at the time or something. I was like, that looks cool, like I want to get there. You could see who put in the time. And although this isn't a turn-based strategy game, it had a mechanic and that gameplay loop built into the game, which I fell absolutely in love with. I'm pretty sure I liked that gameplay loop more than the game itself. You know what I mean? Like, if the game has a gameplay loop in it that you like, it doesn't even matter if you like the game or not. You're kind of addicted to the gameplay loop itself. In this case, it was Prestige. Another game I thought did a really good well with that Prestige system was Titanfall. Titanfall was one of the very first games I got with my Xbox One. I think I got the Xbox One Titanfall bundle. That's probably why. And they had the exact same prestige system that Call of Duty Black Ops, the original, had. And I absolutely loved that. I never got to the max prestige, but I got to like 6 or 7, and it was awesome. I think 7, because it was like the orange, gray, white one. I think it was one of the coolest ones. I have to share an image on screen for you guys there. But then I also finally built my very first PC. Now, I built this PC primarily for video editing, so I didn't really worry about a graphics card. Good CPU, not the greatest GPU, but that was okay because the games that my friends were playing a lot of at the time and that I was able to finally be a part of were League of Legends and Rocket League. League of Legends was my very first game I played on the PC, besides chess. You can play chess anywhere, and I play a lot of chess online. League of Legends was the first game that kind of taught me how to use this old thing and this to play a game. Now, granted, I'm not good at first-person shooters with a keyboard and mouse, but I wasn't good at anything with a keyboard and mouse. Playing League of Legends, which is specifically designed for a keyboard and mouse, it was cool. The coolest thing about this game, though, for me, was the connection I had with my friends. I remember staying up till 1 or 2 a.m., sometimes 3, playing League of Legends. Rocket League, much like League of Legends, for me and my friend group, they seem to be the 2 pillars of our personal Discord with our friends. It seems like we always come back to these 2 games. And that's something I kind of learned with video games. Sometimes shared video games are a place for friends to just meet. When I was a kid, I always was fascinated by trading cards and the trading card games, but I was never able to learn how to play them. I remember in grade school when people would have Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards, and no one knew how to play. We would just lay them on the table, and the only card anyone knew how to play in Yu-Gi-Oh was Dark Hole, because it simply said on the card, destroy all monsters. And it's like, oh, that's obvious. All right, all your monsters are gone, and so are mine. And then people would argue, why would it destroy my own monsters? It's my card. You know, no one knew the rules. That's my point. But I was like, man, I really wish I knew how to play a trading card game. Man, when I was a kid, I was really big into Naruto. That was like my all-time favorite anime. Naruto even came out with a trading card game, and I tried to learn how to play. They had a manual coming with a deck of cards, and I would read it cover to cover, and I just couldn't figure out how the game worked. I didn't understand how to form teams and how to use the chakra system in that game. It's very weird. I still don't think I know how to play it. However, the closest I got to learning how to play real card games like Magic the Gathering and such was a friend of mine in high school. He literally taught me how to play Yu-Gi-Oh because he knew how to play Yu-Gi-Oh. And once I learned how to play one trading card game, the great thing about that, if you know how to play one, you're more likely to be able to teach yourself how to play another, because then you start learning how the mechanics and just the ebbs and flow of a card game and the cards and the rules interact with each other. The most confusing one was, we'll take Yu-Gi-Oh for example. When you cast a spell and then your opponent responds with a counter spell, the order of operation is the last is first. So if I play a card, then you play a card, well, your card actually resolves first because it might counter the card that I played. But it doesn't work the other way around. Like, well, I played mine first, I should resolve mine first. Well, that wouldn't work, because then how would you ever have a chance to have any counterplay, right? So like, just knowing that one little nuance helped me learn how to play other card games. All of that to say, one of the games I sunk so much time in when it first came out was Hearthstone, made by Blizzard. And wow, did I love this game, because it fought 2 problems that I had with Yu-Gi-Oh! And other card games. The biggest problem it fought was finding someone to play. It turned out the only people that would play Yu-Gi-Oh! With me was the friend who taught me, and sometimes we'd have another person at lunch or 2 that started getting into the mix, and then we didn't have time to get us all included, so we didn't have much time to be able to play. You could only play when you had another friend with you across the table. And, well, playing Hearthstone online solved that issue, because there's always people across the table online. The other problem that Hearthstone solved for me was you can't cheat the rules. So if there's any discrepancies or a misunderstanding in the card game when you're playing in real life, well, how do you know? You have to look it up. You have to get confirmation from someone. In Hearthstone or another online card game, guess what? If you can't do that, it's not going to let you do that. So I thought that was really cool. I remember playing a Yu-Gi-Oh game on my DS, and that also helped me further my understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh because it wouldn't let me do actions that aren't possible. And it also taught me how certain cards actually worked. Like, wait, I didn't realize I could do this and that with this card. I didn't realize how powerful this card was. But then, now I do. I want to mention 2 more games. One is, it was a phenomenon when it released, and it's still re-releasing every, 5 years, it feels like. And that was Skyrim, Elder Scrolls V. When that game came out, literally everyone was playing it, and everyone was talking about it. That game, nowadays, is one of my comfort games. I find myself going back to it every other year or so to replay the entire thing. That's the type of game where you have some good combat, great storytelling, great grinds to complete, missions to accept, quests to finish, and all wrapped up in a beautiful fantasy-driven world. The funny thing about that game is, not too long after Skyrim came out, an even better game came out that I played like 20 hours of, and that's it. Whereas Skyrim, I played hundreds of hours, and that was The Witcher 3. I have no doubt in my mind if The Witcher 3 came out at the same time, or even closer within a year, I would probably have played so much more Witcher 3 than I ever did with Skyrim. However, by the time The Witcher 3 came out, I already completed Skyrim. I replayed it probably once or twice, and now it was locked in my brain as a familiarity. Like, I could come back to that if I'm just trying to relax and enjoy a beautiful world. Even though The Witcher 3 has, I think, objectively better combat, a deeper, richer story and lore, and also a even beautiful world, better graphics, if anyone cares about that, I would still choose Skyrim. If you toss them both into me, like, you can only play one game for the rest of your life, I'm like, ugh, gotta go with Skyrim there. Which kind of has me thinking, like, sometimes the best game isn't the one with the better graphics or rated higher on IGN or whatever. It's the one that comes into your life at the right time. So looking back at all these games, my last pattern that I recognized between all of them were not about genre. They weren't about gameplay mechanics or gameplay loops, but rather strategy was an obvious one that came out. Thinking ahead, problem solving, games that last years, games that I find myself coming back to, games that create a shared experience with friends. I'm firing off the cuff here a little bit, but another thing I kind of realized just now in the moment is a lot of these games are skill related. Even these turn-based strategy games like Pokemon, where you might not argue that Pokemon takes more skill than something like a fast-paced FPS game like Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever in like a competitive play environment, or like League of Legends where you have to make quick decisions and stuff. But these are games that you can get better at, and you can compete against other people. And so these games where you feel like, one, enjoy, but two, are getting better at, and three, you can have the possibility of competing against others, again, like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, Rocket League. That really helps me sink my teeth into these sorts of games, because now I have another reason to play for. Can I get a little bit better at this game? Can I set myself apart from the crowd, my peers, my friends in my Discord? So maybe my favorite games aren't just the ones I play the most, but the ones that shape the way I think and how I adapt and grow as a competitor, as a hobbyist, as a cozy game enjoyer, as a thinker, as a critical thinker, but most importantly, the ones that keep me feeling closest to my friends, games that unite us together, because there's no better feeling than have on the, a Friday evening when all your friends are done with school or work or life, and you all get to reconnect. For me, it looks like reconnecting on Discord, finding a game that we're all playing, and those late nights with the boys. Those are memories I'm going to have for forever. Just the feeling that we had in the moment. That's probably the feeling that we're all chasing. If I had to gather 3 key bullet points that wrap up all these games in one nice box with a bow tied on top, it'd be games that reward thinking, last a long time, and bring friends together. Now it's your turn. In the comments, share with me and the community what your games that you can trace back to when you were a kid are. What's your timeline look like in regards to video games? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you. Fellas, thank you so much for watching. If you like this sort of content, hit that subscribe button. If you want to join me on stream, get a chance to play me at a game of chess, I stream Monday through Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. We're an open door. Come on in, say hi. I'd love to see you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Bye.